But I have to say, it feels so much smoother to drive. Hello everybody, welcome, and hopefully by the end of this episode, Frankie, the Elise, will be finally running again and I can take it to get set up. The first thing to do is to sort out that stripped thread that I had on the slave cylinder mount. So let me just show you what I'm doing. So I have bought a helicoil kit. I think that will be the easiest thing. So that is an M10. This is an M12 helicoil kit, which should mean I've already drilled out that thread with the right size. I now have to cut a thread into it, and then I can put one of these helicoil inserts in, and that will act as a thread for the new bolt. So let's see if I can make that work. So first of all, it is really about cutting the thread in here. Again, you have to sort of do a little bit of cutting and then back out to take out the swarf. So now that a thread has been cut in there, it's time to put the helicoil in, and you have a special little tool that comes with the kit, because the helicoil has a little lipped edge there, a little bit of the spring, and you put it there and then try and wind it in. That seems to have grabbed. Brilliant. And then it says to turn it until one turn is visible and out the way, which has been done. And then you're supposed to push that last little thread out with a hammer. Okay, well, that looks like it's worked pretty well. So I'll be able to get this bracket on and off, and that's the first little job done out the way. So I have just received the new clutch, and I was a bit worried because the old clutch was a Borg & Beck, and Borg & Beck have got a good reputation, and although this one failed, I was quite happy to buy another one. Since then though, on the Lotus forums on Selloc, some of the guys said that there was a documented issue with some of these older Borg & Beck clutches with the 3 rivets. However, others then said no, yours is an upgraded clutch, so I don't know what to think. But reassuringly, the new clutch plate, so I bought a whole new clutch, by the way, with all 3 pieces, but the new clutch plate is actually different. So it has 4 bigger springs as opposed to the 6 of the old one. They have inner springs, and it has a new center plate, and this sort of the retaining plate in the middle seems to be bigger and thicker than the old one. So I'm quite reassured by that. So anyway, the next stage now is to bolt this and the pressure plate onto the gearbox, onto the engine. And then I'm going to try and use my sort of jack lift contraption to get it in place. Hopefully, I'm sure it will be a cinch. Hopefully the friction plate is labelled up with the gearbox side. So that goes like that onto the pressure plate. And then it's ready to put on. So as I mentioned, the guys on the Selloc forums have been following and helping me out, and something really quite remarkable, or anyway something I'm really pleased about, has happened as a result of that. Arno said to me, be really careful that the locating dowels that locate the gearbox to the engine are straight and tight, because he had an issue previously on one of his cars where the dowels were slightly bent, or they were slightly out of shape or worn, and it didn't quite locate the gearbox 100%. And obviously that makes complete sense with this, because when I got hold of Borg & Beck and sent them pictures of the way my clutch failed, they showed them to their engineers, who said 90% of the time when it fails like that on that center plate and it cracks, it's because the gearbox is incorrectly located, so it's not lined up properly. So anyway, I had a look at the dowels, and they're not there. There aren't any locating dowels on my engine or on my gearbox. Now this car has had different engines, different gearboxes, so I think what happened at some point, one gearbox got taken out with the dowel still in there possibly, and then the next gearbox didn't have any. When it went in, it wasn't noticed, and that kind of explains everything. And it makes me really happy, because I love finding out exactly what's happening. There was always the question of, why has this clutch failed? It doesn't make any sense. And the fact that without the locating dowels, the bolts that go through the gearbox, well, there's enough play in them that, you know, the gearbox could be off by 1 mil, even maybe 2 mil, and that is enough to put strain on the friction plate and eventually cause it to fail. I've got to order the dowels now, unfortunately, so a bit of a delay before I can refit everything, but getting there. Centering the friction plate onto the pressure plate and onto the block is actually quite tricky, and normally you'd have a special tool, which I don't have. So I'm going to be using, there we go, a socket. So that tapered end fits exactly with the masking tape on it into the flywheel side, and this now really snugly against the pressure plate. So if we can see that, that's it, and that is, well, it should be absolutely bang on now. Hello everybody, yet another day, and in the never-ending saga that appears to be happening with the Frankenlees, I found another problem. Not only were the dowels missing, and I've now got them and they are now positioned and put them in the engine block, but one of the mounts for the dowels there had been crushed. So I think at some point when the gearbox was moved around, not by me, it had at some point been sort of dropped or put down heavily on this corner, and that had sort of pushed the dowel hole up, which I suspect is also maybe why there weren't any dowels being used, because you couldn't use it, but then you could have used one on the other side. Anyway, point is, had to try and straighten that out, and I've done that as much as possible, and I think the dowel now goes in, it all seems to line up. Luckily it's only the outer edge that was crushed, so I think the inner edge was still fine, and it means that in terms of location it should still be okay. But anyway, just, you know, further complications really, just to add to it. Right, time to try and get it back on. It is so tight. Things aren't going very well. So the platform that I used is just too, well, it doesn't work. Well, it does. It worked to get it roughly into place, but then once there, it's kind of too wide to keep pushing the gearbox up. And also, the problem is it's kind of there now, as you can see, but I just can't get it past that bit. It keeps hitting the back of the wall of the chassis and stuff, and I think it needs to be sort of really manoeuvred and wiggled up to get it up there, and I'm not going to do that with the jack, so I'm just going to try and push it into place. So now the quick jack isn't working. I've phoned quick jack, they were really good about the support, and they say that usually when it does that it's just not getting enough voltage. Problem with the quick jack at least solved. These jump leads that I was using to connect it are obviously just crap, because I wondered about that, how much resistance they were putting in, and I've created another connection and now it seems to be working fine. So, okay, good. So I've lowered the car, I didn't show it, but it's lowered. I've taken the gearbox back out because I couldn't lower it with the gearbox in place and everything moving around. So I am going to attempt pushing it myself, which we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, I do have a friend coming at some point today, and hopefully he can, I think he's here now, he can help out. You ready? Yeah, you got it? Yeah, I got it. Now. That's just not going to happen. Right, so James looked at the guide again, and it mentioned that when you take the box out, you're supposed to move it around 90 degrees and then it will drop down. So I think he's quite right. So we're trying now, instead of going in the right position, it's now tilted around 90 degrees. The idea is to get it up there. In theory, I suppose get that into the into the splines and then twist it. So that's what we're going to try now. I'm not going to film it because it's just, honestly, this is so much hassle at the moment. Making some good progress. So I think that the input shaft from the gearbox is actually finally through the center of the pressure plate, although we can no longer see it now because it is much closer in. Well, guys, unbelievable. We managed to get it in. I probably wouldn't have done it without James, just because he bothered reading. And, you know, it is, to get it in, you have to do it at 90 degrees, engage the output shaft, then you spin it round and goes in. And it wasn't that difficult in the end to do it that way. It took, you know, with the help of the trolley jack, it was perfectly doable, and it took about, I'd say it took about 10 minutes once we actually got it done. But obviously I spent countless hours trying to do it the wrong way and doing other stuff. But it is hard work, and you do need two people, really. I mean, you don't need two people, but it made it so much easier once I had a helper. So that's all done. I've got the, I've tightened all the bolts. I've got the mount on. I've just got to do a load of other stuff, but also the suspension arms need to go back on. I forgot to say that on this side, I had totally removed the suspension arms, the whole suspension really, just for ease of access. And I'm going to have a look at those rear calipers while I'm at it, because they, yeah, they're definitely, I don't know, I just want to make sure they're all right and just check them out and do some other stuff while I'm here. But just a bit of assembly, but practically there now. Well, everybody, I think it was 2 weeks ago that I set out originally to go and get petrol so I could then take the Elise to go and set up. It's taken me this long to sort it out, and it has been difficult. At the moment it's sort of pulling all over the place because the new rear toe links, although I did them as close to the measurement of the old ones as I could, they're still not right. So obviously it is going to go for setup. I think that's going to be next week. I don't have time to include it in this video, but I have to say, it feels so much smoother to drive. I think that before, the fact that the gearbox was misaligned was obviously also introducing a little bit of vibration, because it just feels a bit better, which is nice after having done all that. It has been massively difficult, but only because I didn't know how to do it. Hopefully, if you look back over the videos, or if you have problems, get in touch with me. But you should be able to do it. It shouldn't be impossible to do it this way, really. Thank you all so much for watching, and next week, finally, I'm going to get it set up properly, and I think I'm going to get some new tyres on it as well, and then we will take it for a proper last shakedown, which will just be wicked. And I've got some other stuff coming as well. I've got an improved gear linkage, all sorts of stuff, so all exciting hopefully for now.